Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, as you know, give you sports information from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports. That works both for Twitter and Instagram. But yes, for today's segment, we'll be talking more about the world of cricket and the happenings that truly are currently underway. The biggest one is obviously Ramiz Raja actually pretty close to become the new PCB chairman. And not only that, we'll surely be discussing the New Zealand visit that is also scheduled for Pakistan. And besides that, we'll surely talk about the last test match between England and India. To discuss all these in-depth analysis, we have with us Tanzeel Khwaja. Tanzeel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Great. So Tanzeel, it's a big news out there, and yes, we surely are looking at the processes through which he'll surely be recommended, because the succession process is still underway for Ramiz Raja to finally be out there as a PCB chairman. So how do you see this major decision from PCB, and how impactful could it be for Pakistan cricket team?
Well, I think, first of all, it's been very divisive. I think you've got loads of people in the pro camp and then, against camp, as you would expect. We know Ramiz Raja is a bit of a, he likes to have a few opinions, obviously he has his YouTube channel and everything. So, we've heard him with his rants, but also, he has, good criticisms as well. And sort of, look, the last few years, Pakistan cricket has in a way sort of gone from strength to strength, not necessarily talking about the national team, but right, in terms of the, cricket in Pakistan, obviously that's a massive thing. And he has some big shoes to fill if you think about it. Ahsan Mani over the last 3 years with Wasim Khan has really sort of stepped up and got cricket restarted again. We've got the PSL back in Pakistan, and of course COVID. No one could have predicted that, and its impact on cricket. But if you look at it in in its raw form, I think it's been going up and up, and he has a huge role to play in order to make sure that he continues doing that. And instead of Pakistan going back a few steps, he now needs to take it a couple steps forward.
Right. And the interesting thing when I look into Ramiz Raja, as you were discussing in terms of his own YouTube channel, yes, he has a lot of question marks, and he always talks about a lot of players that were actually never got given a chance or taken the chance away from. So I think now that he will come on board, will he have that power or that authority enough? Because he's automatically entering into a political system, and we know how it works. And I think he needs to up the game, because if he does, because he needs to follow those words that he actually posted on his YouTube channel. Otherwise, I think he'll have to remove those videos.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think it comes to that point where it's easy to speak from the outside, but once you're actually in the system, it's a different ball game. And with Ramiz Raja, of course, he's had his opinions as an analyst outside of the system. But once he's actually in the setup now, it's going to be very interesting, because as we know, once people get into sort of certain positions of power within the Pakistan cricket system, they tend to sort of maybe lose their way a bit.
Right.
But I would hope that Ramiz Raja takes a wider approach and a wider look at what the issues are with Pakistan cricket. As opposed to sort of just saying like, I want him, and I want this gone, this done. There has to be a right balance, and I think Ramiz Raja has to really hopefully strike that balance correctly with everyone in the setup.
Right. And if you remember, Ramiz Raja actually pinpointed a few people when he obviously was really pointing on them, to be very honest. But he has also spoken about Muhammad Amir. He's always spoken good of him, but then there are players that he's not spoken good of. So I think it is going to be interesting to see if he truly wants to use this platform as bringing those lost talents and the excessive baggage he could actually get rid of.
Look, I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic, obviously, with the whole system being Ramiz Raja, and then you've got Misbah al-Haq as well.
Right.
Apparently, you must have heard the rumors that Misbah al-Haq has this World T20 as his sort of final
right,
thing to do, unless he might see the door. I mean, it's a very interesting political setup, obviously, as Pakistan cricket is. Will Ramiz Raja and the Board of Governors look at that and go, right, yes, we will give Misbah this one last chance, and if he doesn't perform, we look to get rid of him and get someone else in. I wouldn't be surprised if they've already, have a list of candidates that they would be looking at. So I'm telling you, there's going to be a very interesting dynamic going on, and we might see some, dead wood, not make teams. There might be some surprise selections. As always with Pakistan cricket, it's hard to predict, but it's going to be a very interesting ride for sure.
Right. Would you also add in some knowledge with regards to Tanzil? Because Ehsan Mani was also offered an extension of a year. But I think, Prime Minister Imran Khan actually managed to come up to a point of maybe giving an opportunity to Ramiz Raja. But obviously, the succession process is still underway. We should also be thankful in terms of Ehsan Mani, in terms of Ehsan Mani's work for PCB, because if we look back, things have upscaled. Obviously, there's a lot of things that have happened. Now even if we look at the upcoming tour of New Zealand to Pakistan, I think, and even South Africa coming to Pakistan and the PSL. So I think there are a lot of round of applauses for the good works that had, PCB had done before.
Yeah, like I said, like I said a bit earlier, there's been loads of good work happened over the last couple of years. Ehsan Mani obviously has done wonders when, talking about bringing cricket back into Pakistan,
Right.
having the PSL. And I think gaining that confidence within other countries. I think if I go back to a documentary that was done
Right.
out of exile, which was the Sky documentary about, cricket returning back to Pakistan, Ehsan Mani did say that we've got to bring other countries into confidence. We've got to give them that confidence that coming to Pakistan is safe. Coming to Pakistan is good, and it should happen. He's given that platform, and
Right.
we've seen it, and we can continue to see it. But then again, like I say, Ramiz Raja needs to take it a few steps forward. Looking ahead now at Pakistan potentially putting their name in to host a few world tournaments,
Absolutely.
2027 onwards maybe. It's just there's quite a few things that can go forward. And you hope that that's the direction it goes in. You hope that it doesn't go one step back and then you have to restart again.
Right.
So
I would also,
hopefully.
Tanzil, want your input with regards to, now we're looking at 1st September, from 1st September it's Bangladesh versus New Zealand, and obviously after that New Zealand will come back to Pakistan, and New Zealand will be having 5 T20s there, and then would come to Pakistan for our schedule and our tour. So I see a very upgraded version of Bangladesh in terms of the last matches we saw them playing against Australia. And what do you think will happen in terms of their performance now against New Zealand?
Well, look, I think it's been a very fascinating series that we just saw against Australia. Bangladesh are springing a few surprises, and the best thing about that for them is the fact that their conditions will most likely be similar to what they'll be playing in the UAE,
Exactly.
in the World T20. So if they've been able to, beat Australia, and I'd say it was a very decent Australian team. There's no denying. Anyone who's playing for Australia, you should, consider them as very good players.
Right.
And they used home advantage. They used their spinners correctly. They got it right when they were batting as well. I think if you look at New Zealand, they will be in a similar vein to Australia as well. I think generally speaking, in the UAE, as we know, subcontinent teams probably have that slight edge and advantage. And I think that Bangladesh wants. I don't know how long it would take, but for us to stop calling it a surprise. But I think Bangladesh will spring a surprise against New Zealand as well.
Right. And to me, to be very honest, it wasn't really a surprise, but the only thing was that in terms of Bangladesh's performance lately, they weren't up to the mark. And I think their confidence level now is to a point of I'm surely seeing and looking forward for an interesting series, not only against New Zealand, but then I'm also interested in upcoming series in Pakistan of the New Zealand team when they will come to Pakistan and they will play on our home ground, our conditions.
Yeah, again, I'd say slightly similar to what both teams will be facing in the UAE. What Pakistan need to do now is obviously it's their final sort of campaign before they move on to the World T20. And, I don't want to get too much into it because it would be a very long conversation. But
I agree.
I don't think Pakistan yet have their finalized 15 or finalized 18, which they can say, right, we know our players. So, again, I'm not sure if Pakistan are going to experiment in the New Zealand series.
Right.
I think it's too close to call now. I think they've got a core group of about 6 to 7 players that they will know that are going to be in the team. It's about filling the slots. So what we might see against New Zealand is a group of, say, 12 to 15 players who will be the probables for the World T20, and Pakistan will probably use them to sort of gain practice
Right. I think all the teams currently are trying to practice and be on the lookout for, obviously, the World T20 World Cup. Your quick take on England versus India. And obviously, it's a very unpredictable perspective of when we see Indian players playing, because I think when they play, when they're in form, they're amazing. But on the contrary, when it comes to England, they also do the same.
Yeah, look, I think if you take the Lord's Test out, which obviously, you know, India had a perfect chance to win that had it not been for the rain, and the next two tests have been absolutely fantastic. I think, look, India have a different culture. They've got a very, very good system. I think their attitude of, you know, never say never and, you know, just never give up was very evident in that second test. Obviously, England are pretty much the same. They also can bounce back, and they have bounced back. And then, you know, they're obviously led by John Root, an amazing captain and an amazing player. So, you know, it's obviously, you know, shaped up to be a brilliant series, and it hasn't, you know, disappointed with two tests to go. I think it's going to be an absolute brilliant finish.
Right. Well, Tanzil, thank you so very much for being a part of the show and discussing the world of cricket with us.
Thank you very much.
So that's Tanzil's in-depth analysis in terms of how things are going. We talked about Ramiz Raja, obviously set to become the PCB chairman, but time will tell how things flow after the succession process. Not only that, we also discussed New Zealand visiting Bangladesh, which is surely going to be an interesting series, starting in from the 1st of September, and then their visit to Pakistan, which surely would be one of the last series that, you know, we would host before we all line up for the World T20 World Cup. Anyways, guys, what we'll do is we'll take a quick break. Once we get back from the break, there is more coming in from the world of sports. And yes, welcome back from the break. And yes, before the break, we were discussing the world of cricket, but there is major development in terms of what's truly happening in the World Premier League. Yes, to discuss the football side, we have with us Matt Barlow. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
Great. So, Matt, I would surely want your take with regards to some interesting matches that actually took place. To begin with, I would rather want you to have a word with Manchester United winning against the Wolves.
Yeah, it wasn't a great performance by Manchester United, but a big win, an important win.
Right.
Late goal from Mason Greenwood, and it's been an exciting few days at Manchester United, hasn't it? With all the news about Cristiano Ronaldo's return.
Right.
And I think, you know, just important for them to win. That's 28 games now unbeaten in the Premier League away from home, which is a remarkable record, and sort of shows a lot of the good things that they've managed to put together, even if they're not quite yet the flowing and flamboyant Manchester United that they'd like to be.
Right, and that was a definite surprise in terms of Cristiano Ronaldo coming here, because I still remember when we were talking about the transfers, and, you know, we all were thinking that he'd probably go to Manchester City, which surely would have been a major disappointment for Man U fans. But I think now they see them as a complete Manchester United.
Yeah, it was a remarkable week in transfers last week. When I spoke to you, we were still thinking maybe Manchester City would come and make another bid for Harry Kane, and a couple of days later it was Manchester City and Cristiano Ronaldo, and then the following day we discovered that Manchester United had decided that Cristiano Ronaldo shouldn't go to Manchester City, and a call from Sir Alex Ferguson, and they're bringing him back to Old Trafford, which is a remarkable story. Right. So, I mean, brilliant, lots of emotion, lots of passion. Manchester United fans are very excited to see what sort of player they get back. He's a different player to the player who left. He left as a young, flying, wide player, a runner and a creator. Absolutely. And he comes back as a more refined centre forward, I think, which is the sort of player that they need.
Even Viva Ronaldo slogans were heard, outside the ground. So I think now I think being at the age of 36, he's still in his super perfect health. And I think we're going to see some more interesting goals from his side for Manchester United.
Yeah, I think he'll have a huge influence on the players at the club as well, simply by his professionalism and the way he approaches his game, and the fact that he is in this amazing physical condition at the age of 36. He's bound to have a positive impact on everybody, and if he can contribute on the pitch as well, we know what a clinical finisher he can be. If he can get himself in front of goal, finish some of the chances that Manchester United create with all the creative influences that they have in the team, then it could work well. But I guess we'll find out once he checks in for duty. He's going to play for Portugal first, and then he'll come after the international break, and we'll see how he does.
Right. I would also want to discuss with one interesting match that took place. Yes, I'm talking about Liverpool versus Chelsea. I think that's also one interesting match that happened, and I think it raises a lot of eyebrows in terms of Reece James' handball, which if we actually saw the match in the first half, they actually came up to a point of frustration, and we could see a lot of anger on the Chelsea side.
Yeah, the Reece James incident, the handball, the penalty, it turned the game, and there's a lot of anger about it within the Chelsea camp. They thought that the ball had hit Reece James on the top of the leg as he was standing on the line trying to block it, and then deflected up onto his arm.
Right.
There's no doubt it hit his arm and it stopped it going over the line.
Right.
I think Chelsea thought that generally there's a rule that if it's deflected from another part of the body onto the arm, then it shouldn't be a goal. But I think on the goal line, if you stop anything with your arm, then it's going to be penalised. It's going to be stopped. If you stop the goal with your hand, it's going to be stopped. So the penalty, I think, is less contentious. And then there's the matter of the red card.
Right.
Was it also a red card? Because as soon as Chelsea lose Reece James, then the game swings totally in Liverpool's favour, and it did. And Chelsea ended up just. Thomas Tuchel made a couple of changes, and they dug in to defend what they had, which was a point. There was one or two breakaways, but I think Chelsea left thinking that was a good, resilient point against a resurgent Liverpool team.
Right, and I think the Chelsea's team have actually filed a petition in terms of this perspective, because they still have, as per them, they still think it was a wrong decision. But I think we all saw it because they were showing during the halftime as soon as he was walking there, and by the time the referee reaches the screen, he just sees that part in which the handball happened. So I think that is one of the question marks which kind of raises a lot of voices from Chelsea's fans.
Yeah, Chelsea will not be happy, and if they appeal, they may appeal the red card. There's nothing you can do about the penalty now, is there? Interestingly here, most of the refereeing pundits have come out since and said the penalty is the right decision. So I'm not sure they'll get a lot of sympathy if they go to the Premier League and argue.
Well, let's hope all goes well ahead for them. Anyways, I would also want to talk about Hotspurs winning against Watford. What's your take on this match? Because I think this is also another interesting fact, because when we talk about Hotspurs, we talk about Harry Kane, we talk about what was planned back then and what truly didn't happen. So what's your take on the match itself?
Yeah, this interesting story at Tottenham. This is a game I went to yesterday.
Right.
And Spurs win 1-0 against Watford. That's their third 1-0 win of the season, 3 wins from 3 games. They're top of the league. And Spurs fans will tell you that Arsenal are bottom of the league. So as it breaks for international football, Spurs fans are very happy, which is remarkable when you look back on the kind of last 3 or 4 months that they've had since Mourinho left. The problems recruiting a new manager, which were exacerbated across the summer when Kane decided he wanted to leave, or made public the fact that he wanted to leave, and spent the entire summer break trying to leave until the end of last week, actually deciding that he was going to stay, that there was no way he was getting his move to Manchester City. So it's been turbulent for Spurs and lots of negativity swirling around the place. But 3 wins, 3 1-0 wins, 3 clean sheets, and the top of the league, and they couldn't have started better. So they're all satisfied at Tottenham.
Right, because of the fact it was a more destabilizing perspective when we were looking at Tottenham Hotspur, and I think, and like, as you mentioned, that in terms of the coach as well. So I think any team who's still finally managing to, while being in the turmoil or a situation, they're managing to hold, and managing to win the clean slate 3 games. I think we see a very bright future here for Tottenham.
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting, Spurs, because they, as they found under Mourinho, they demand a certain style of football at Tottenham. The fans love to see their players playing with their teams playing with adventure, flair. They want thrills. They want goals. So if you actually look closely at what the new manager Nuno Espirito Santo has done, it doesn't involve that. It involves sorting the defence out, making them tight again, and winning the game. At the moment, it's what they need. The perspective for Tottenham was so negative that they just needed to start winning again, and they've done that. But they will reach a point where they'll be expected to play more expansive football and more expressive football. And the question is, can Nuno find that balance then between still keeping the clean sheet and playing a more attractive brand of football? We'll see what happens.
Absolutely, and we would surely want to see more. I'm just curious on one match. Obviously, I would want to talk about how Arsenal is not getting up to the pace that it should have, and I think they are really showing an Arsenal that we have not seen so far.
Yes, a disastrous start for Arsenal. No goals, no points, bottom of the league after 3 games. It just isn't where you expect to see Arsenal. And
right.
There are mitigating factors, because you can look at the fixtures and say they've lost at Manchester City, playing a lot of the game with 10 men,
right.
which was Saturday's game, which is a difficult place to get any points. They've been beaten by Chelsea, who have started the season in brilliant form. They're a good team, aren't they? Under Tuchel and Lukaku's debut. The game they may have expected something from was the first game against Brentford, but they went to Brentford on a day when they were missing a lot of key players because they had an outbreak of the COVID virus inside Arsenal. Right. And Brentford were charged up on emotion. This was their first Premier League game ever. It was their first top-flight game since 1947. They were in a new stadium, so everything was against Arsenal. So they've had a difficult start, but they've started so badly, and the pressure is already on Mikel Arteta and on Arsenal too. I don't know whether they can find another recruitment or 2 before the transfer window closes tomorrow, but certainly they've got to get their act together and come out of the international break and turn these results around and start winning. Otherwise, I think we'll see some change there.
Well, let's hope, Matt, things go in a direction for them, because all the Arsenal fans are surely upset and disappointed, and they're just hoping for this one miracle. I hope that works for them. But anyways, thank you so much, Matt, for being a part of the show and discussing the world of Premier League with us. So that was the in-depth analysis of Matt in terms of the world of Premier League, and yet it has been an interesting journey so far. So what we'll do is we'll surely keep you guys posted in the long run on what truly is going to happen in the future. We will also want to talk about Arsenal's upcoming match, which surely may change for them, which is going to be against Norwich City on Saturday. But let's see how things goes. And obviously Manchester United, it's still on the pace where it's supposed to be, and big name Chelsea also will be facing Aston Villa on Saturday. But anyways, guys, what you need to do is you guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Sports. That works both for Twitter and Instagram. Anyways, take care of yourselves, and bye-bye.